Welcome to Creative Control, episode 5. EASTON 5? I think 5. We are so happy to see you again. If you're returning, if you are new, we're happy to have you. What we're doing here is getting into content, the art and the business behind it. You probably saw some sort of intro thing here. We're just happy to have you here, and we're excited to be getting into something today that I think is really interesting. This is the debunking of Patrick Bet-David's 20 rules of podcasting. I think Patrick Bet-David is probably a name that if you're in the media space, you're familiar with already. He's massive. He's one of those people who over the last few years has seemingly come out of nowhere. If you weren't aware of him, I'm one of those people who was not aware of him. Since then, I've done some more digging on just kind of who he is, what he's about, how he made his money, how he made his impact, and now how he has grown to have a massive, massive, massive media presence. Personally, I don't know about the guy. I'm not really sure on him, to be honest. I've heard some things. I've heard great things. I've heard some not so great things, as I'm sure I would find if I dug into anybody's past. But media-wise, I think objectively speaking, he's somebody that we can look at as probably knows what he's talking about. And so when he released this video, 20 Rules of Podcasting, I immediately was like, I'm listening. Let's dive into this. And so what we're going to do today is just walk through his 20 rules. And we're going to see where we land. Is this a thumbs up or is this a thumbs down? And I think let's keep it that simple of thumbs up, thumbs down, no thumbs in the middle. It's only extremes. It's up or down depending on how we feel about this whole list. So without further ado, the first point, don't start a podcast just to make money. As soon as I pressed play on this video and he jumped into this as the number one point, I stood up. And EASTON's in the other room. I stood up and I applauded because for me, and I know for EASTON, he gets specifically pissed off about this. This is one of the things that we have to continuously mitigate expectations around. Everybody wants to make money on a podcast because, as you've seen us talk about in other content, everybody sees the massive deals being thrown out. Everybody sees the Joe Rogan for 150 mil, the Alex Cooper for 200 mil, the Travis Kelce New Heights for this many mil. Those deals are few and very, 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 and increasingly far between. You should not expect to make a massive amount of money on a podcast up front. Now, in the long game, yes, podcasts can be insanely profitable. Absolutely. Depending on if you're that talented, if your guests are that notable, and if your content matter is actually quality, and also the fourth one would probably be you're marketing it in a way that's going to get you the views and the eyeballs. Oh, and also, by the way, you then have to manage the brand relationships on the back end of that. So it's not even just like you got to create the product and then the brands flow in. It does require a lot of work to monetize a successful podcast. Even the most notable podcasts on earth have a team behind them who work specifically on the monetization, the brand partnerships, the managing those relationships to make sure deliverables are met. If we miss something, we have to make sure we make good on it and go back. There's a whole game behind the monetization of a podcast. And what I always tell people is podcasts are marketing first, monetization second. So they're a marketing arm primarily. They're a down the road secondarily monetization revenue stream. That's so important to remember. Now, there's ways to fast track that. We'll get into on another video as far as like monetizing. But it's, I think, just like 30,000 foot view, it's important, broad stroke, to know that money is a later thing. You got to build it first, and then you keep building it, and then it will come. EASTON, scroll back up for a sec. He made a couple of points there that I thought were great, though. Have a message. The point of your show should not be to make money initially. The point of your show should be to get your messaging out there. And then also he underlines in there, hey, have some fun. Which, yeah, if you're worried about the bottom line of your podcast every single episode, you're not going to enjoy it, and then you're probably not going to do it for very long. So good points there. Love that, PBD. Cool. Keep it moving. Point 2, create compelling content. Initially, I was like, vague. So vague. I was like, oh, here we go. The first point was great. Second point, here we go with the vague advice. But then he double clicked on it and he went into it and he said, make a short list of topics that you can go deep on. And I'm immediately like, oh, dude, I'm back on the PBD train. This is fantastic, because he's basically explaining in his own way our pillars of content, where it's like, hey, don't come in here and try to like eat a whale in one bite. You got to break this thing down into little pieces and focus on early on those little pillars of content, those things that you're like, this is a topic that I can go so deep on. And he worded this really well. He said, start deep, then you can go wide. So start deep, be like, I'm the expert on, in this show, podcasting. That's what we're doing. Later, I can be like, hey, let's talk about XYZ, probably still creative things, but at least like are outside of our super narrow niche of podcasting. Love the way that he said that. Awesome. Let's keep it moving. Point 3, he brings up identify your outcome, which I thought was really important. And this is something that comes up in conversations we have with new clients, prospective clients who are like, I want to do a show. I'm just not really sure like what I want to be, like what is it going to do? And we initially circle back to the question of like, yeah, but what do you want out of this? Because if you do tell me you want to make money, then okay, we know we need to mitigate those expectations. If you tell me though that your goal is to generate a ton of marketing content, which is the goal of this show, great. We can accomplish that day one. Day one, we're going to drop your episode. You're going to have 5 to 7 quality clips. There's your marketing content. Check, outcome achieved. And then we make sure we hit that week over week. So I also thought it was interesting that he unpacks here. He started out the show trying to basically just show the world like, hey, this is how I do business. He wanted to showcase, I mean, again, similar to us, where it's like, hey, this is who I am. This is who EASTON is. Like, this is 2 people on the team here. This is the set. You can see it. This is the production quality. This is our marketing when you see this on a feed and a clip. And I like that he came out and was like, hey, I wanted to show the world how we do business. And then that evolved over time into basically a full media arm and then its own company underneath his umbrella. So I like the identify your outcome because I think it helps you to hone in to really set those expectations. But this is essentially like just setting KPIs, which you would do with any other marketing campaign or any other venture. Like basically ask yourself the question, what do you need to see to consider this a success? And if the answer is $100,000 a year in profit, hey, let's have a separate conversation. If it's I want to have a bunch of content that represents me in a way that positions me as a thought leader in the space, great. You got that week 1. Next, some of these are really quick, so we're going to fly through them. Be yourself. Don't act. Don't copy. I like this. I would add to this, though. You can look at what else is out there and figure out what is working for people and then adapt it in your own way. So it's your personal version of it to you. I think copying is wrong. I think if you're familiar with like Steal Like an Artist, the book, and just that as a concept, being able to see something in the space, say, oh, that's a thing that works. How can I appropriate this to my brand and who I am to make this work for me and give me the same type of success? The don't act, dude, the amount of Chris D'Elia actors out there is insane. That's the main one that always comes to mind is like the people who jump on a mic and just are immediately using Chris D'Elia tropes and verbiage and jokes and tones and all that, which I get it. They're fun to do. They're definitely fun to do. But you got to grow into yourself as a host on the mic, whether it's solo episodes or with people. The only way you do that is by reps and really just finding your voice and taking influence from others, but not letting it influence who you are. Manage expectations is the next one. And he says, understand where you're at. You're not going to get massive guests right away. You have to start at the bottom and work your way up. And I think that's incredibly important. And that also just comes back to like the consistency of podcasting, where because you have an at-bat every single week, and I'm a baseball guy, so there's going to be a lot of baseball analogies. You get an at-bat every single week, which means I don't think there's really high stakes on any given week, which means because it's a long race, it's a long game, there's 9 innings here, we can really take our time to work our way up the ladder, knowing that we're going to get back around the lineup next week. You don't need to go get a Patrick Bet-David on your podcast as your guest week 1, but you can work up to him. And I think it's important to recognize exactly where you're at. Some people who are watching this, you might be in a position where you're like, I can get Patrick Bet-David week 1, whether it's through a connection or you know him personally or whatever that is. And that's great. And I would say, by the way, on that note, go get him, because the whole saving guests thing is ridiculous. Stop saving guests. Go get your guests. Why? Why should I just go get my biggest guests and blow them out of the gates? because they're going to lead you to bigger guests. Saving people for like down the line puts you in a position where now you might actually put out so much of the show that they watch it and they're like, I don't actually even like the show. Or you've had such a resume of people on the show that are not up to par with the big guests that you're saving. And then they're going to be like, well, I'm going to be the biggest one on the roster. And I know that sounds really dumb, to like a dumb way of thinking, but some people do think that way. They're going to want to be like among the stars. They might not want to be the biggest one on the roster and be like, oh, so you're just looking for a favor from me, basically. Get your big guests up front. That's why I got my brother first. And then Adley after that. I just think it's something that happens in podcasting where people don't go after guests. And I'm off track there, but just a point I wanted to make. I guess kind of on that note, staying there, the next point is high profile guests or partnerships. So this is a part where PBD shares a story here about how he got Mark Cuban on his podcast. And the way he shares the story honestly kind of felt like he was just sharing how he like got close to Mark Cuban, which great. Good for you. That's cool. But he basically said like Mark Cuban had an app that he was trying to launch, and PBD was like, I can drive downloads. I'm going to this live event. I can help drive downloads. If I can drive downloads to a certain number, will you come on my podcast? Can I come and interview you? And Cuban was like, yeah. And he was like, how many do I need to do? What's the KPI there? And he was like, 1,500 or so. Or I think he said 500 or something like that. Whatever. Long story less long. PBD goes and does like 1,500. And so he 3x'd what the expectation was. And then Cuban's like, yeah, okay, cool. Let's do it. That's awesome, man. I love that. And so he went to Cuban's place. They did a interview. And that's how he got him on the I mean, I guess the story there is like, sometimes you got to get creative to get people on the show. I don't really know how I feel about that. I think it's kind of a interesting way to get there, but like whatever, he got him on the show. Cuban's never been on this show. So congrats. Get creative, I guess, if you feel like there's a way that you can get somebody on the show and skip steps, because it doesn't sound like he was in a position like where his show was probably deserving of having somebody of that magnitude on, but he was able to get him. And great, you skipped a lot of rungs on the ladder to do that. PBD, well done. Next, unreasonable treatment. This piggybacked off the last one. Another thing that he did with Cuban and that he does with a lot of his guests, and sounds like what he did with all of his guests early on, was he was giving them personalized gifts. And he makes the point of, don't give people your merch. They don't want it. If they did, they would ask for it or they would buy it. So if you want to have some around, and if they're like, dude, can I have one of those hats? Can I grab one of those shirts? Great. Yes. Have them available to give to them if they ask for them. But he went further and was like, I found Cuban this like, I don't know, first edition of some book that he loved or something like that. Something really, really like intimate where he totally understood who Mark was and things that Mark valued outside of like superficial items. And Cuban loved it. He was like, this is one of the best gifts I've ever gotten. And he plays the clip. It's awesome. Really, really cool. And I do think that personal touch goes a long way, because in addition to having people on the podcast to help you generate cool podcast content and give you, great names in your episode titles, I think part of having people on a podcast, especially in the business space, is you're growing your network. And in the same way that if you're at an event and you meet somebody and you guys have a great chat and whatever, and you leave, you want to leave them with a great taste in their mouth. You want them to feel like, wow, that person was awesome. They made me feel great for whatever reason. Now, the gift thing is one way to do that. That's very obvious. It can also get expensive very quickly. So if you're not in a position to do that, then probably don't do that. Maybe pick your spots. But I think all of that to say, like, unreasonable treatment goes way past just buying gifts for your guests. It goes to, what is the communication like leading up to the podcast and the scheduling? What is the communication like when they get to the spot where you're going to record? How do you greet them at the spot when they arrive? When they get into the studio, how are they treated? You get them a drink? Do you give them water? Hey, can I get you anything? We have snacks over here. Whatever it is, let's get you seated right here. Production crew does a great job in here of making sure that all the guests feel comfortable and safe and chill and relaxed. We want a very easygoing vibe in here. All of that is unreasonable treatment. We're going above and beyond. It's not like when you just have a buddy come over and you're like, yo, you just want to come over and kick it and watch the game? And then like they knock on the door and you're just like, come in. And then they come in. Like, it's got to be unreasonably nice. And I do really like the way that he frames that there. Unreasonable treatment for all of your guests. They should leave the episode feeling like they were royalty in the studio. Let's take a breath. How we doing?
Solid.
All right, good. Let's not take too big a breath because we'll lose viewer attention. Let's stick with it. Go to them. Interesting point. Very interesting point. And this is becoming more and more prevalent in podcasting for a couple of reasons. One, people are running out of guests in their own cities. And so, yes, you could go remote and, we do it in here. We'll video call somebody in and that works. It's okay. And we have cool ways to make it look really, really good with a teleprompter and all that type of stuff. On the other hand, nothing will ever replace in person. And so if you're in a position where you've kind of run out of people in your city or in your local area, or there's somebody big that is worth the trip for you, if you can, go to them. Or if you're in a different tax bracket, fly them to you and put them up. And again, unreasonable treatment. That's something that is really nice where it's like, hey, you want to come out and just give me like 45 minutes of your time and I'll pay for your flight and hotel to do so. And like, I'll take you out for drinks or whatever afterwards. Going to them really is like the ultimate unreasonable treatment. And I think the other reason why, in addition to like, I'm out of people in my local area, that people end up traveling to go do podcasts and go to people, is because there are so many more options now to leverage. The amount of people that we've gotten in this studio who don't live here but come here to town to do a giant chunk of podcast recordings, and they just want to book this out for the day to be like, hey, I'm going to do 8 episodes, 8 hours. I'm going to block the whole thing out. I have a bunch of guests in Nashville that are all going to come in. I'm going to film it, and then I'm going to leave and fly home. That is happening so much more frequently this year than every year before combined, truthfully. I just think that the podcast game has evolved to where there's more and more studios like us sprouting up in specifically major cities. And honestly, I'm really surprised at how many are in the smaller cities. There's a good amount. There are podcast studios if you're looking for them. So going to your guests just became a whole lot easier because you pay for your flight, you pay for your stay, and then you book a studio out for, a couple $100 an hour. Next thing you know, you got your state-of-the-art, everything studio quality, and you didn't have to wrestle with a Zoom call and, generate trash conversation and trash clips. So going to them whenever possible, be in person. If going to them is the answer, do it. Love it, especially for somebody high profile who's going to really do big things for you. Next, niche focus and content types. He basically just says, you got to find what format and content works for you. Which, to me, means like, are you a reaction guy? Are you an analytical stat guy? Are you an interview guy? Are you a straight to camera guy? And I don't think you got to be just one guy or girl. I think you can be multiple people. It's just more so the focus of like, figure out what works for you. Put yourself in the best position to succeed. If you're not a good interviewer, don't interview people. That shouldn't be your podcast. Or be okay with not being a good interviewer until you become a good interviewer, because practice is going to make you better. But I think the self-awareness of like, figure out what works for you is really important. That comes back on like, who are you and your skill set and your interests. That also comes back to how does your audience receive it? We're going to find out through doing this show. I love that we can just do real life examples of like this show as we walk through stuff. Through doing this show, we're going to realize, do people like the interviews when we sit down with somebody more, or do they like this type of stuff when we sit down and we break down content? And I can't wait to see, because honestly, I like doing both a lot. They're different for me. But if the audience overwhelmingly likes one more than the other, we'll stop doing the other. Like, you have that control over the show. If you like one thing, tell us. If you don't like the other thing, tell us. That's why we ask for people to jump in the comments. By the way, while we're here, jump in the comments. Let us know how you feel about all of that. Guest requests, topic requests. We want the comments here to also, we've said this in the past, we want comments to be like a networking event. Jump in there, network with some people. We'll be in there answering comments too. If you go back and you look at all the comments and all the other videos, we're right there answering. We want this to be a two-way feedback or a two-way conversation, dialogue, I guess, as they say. Like, subscribe, etc. Thanks. Leverage AI is the next point. This is something that I've been really high on recently. Me and ChatGPT, tight, bro. Tight. Real tight right now. Got him in shape. He's ready. Mid-season form, and it's only April. PBD talks about how it's okay to be basic when you start, but if you're basic, you should use ChatGPT or some sort of AI to help you write your interviews. You could straight up ask it, hey, if you were a great podcast interviewer, or podcast host in the style of, pick your favorite podcaster that you want to be like, how would you interview, insert guest name here? What are 10 quality questions that you would ask? And then I want to be more specific. Give me questions that they haven't been asked in other interviews before. That's how you really start to do kind of what we're trying to do here. Like, I don't want to have the typical interview. You saw in the Adley interview when I was like, I don't want to talk about X, Y, Z. She's already talked about those things. Chat can help you differentiate your conversations because it can do endless amounts of research more than you ever can. So using chat that way is one way. I think there's endless other ways to use it too. I mean, the possibilities with what you can do with chat are getting more and more insane by the day. So that might even be something we do our own video on. If you're looking for it, let us know if you want to see like an AI and podcasting video, because we could deep dive there. Moving on, effective questioning. He's just basically saying go deeper. And this is the fluffiest of the fluffy that he gives in this list. Just go deeper. And basically that means don't be simple-minded, get into, they answer a question, ask a question that digs in more onto that topic. Nobody wants to sit down and listen to people be like, so how are things? And you're like, so good, dude. They're so good. Oh, that's awesome. Really, really cool. Yeah, it's nice. How are you? I'm great, man. No, that sucks. Everybody just tuned out already with me just doing the example. Go deeper. There's a board game that has one of those cards that's like, it's like one of those share your feelings thing. And then when you feel somebody has like more to give on that, you hold up the go deeper card. There's a lot of other jokes there that I won't make because this is a professional show. Study great interviewers. Thank you, Patrick Bet-David, for saying this. There are so many podcasters out there now. For you not to have a favorite podcaster is dumb. It's dumb. It's just dumb. In the same way that if you wanted to play in the NBA and I said, who's your favorite player? And you said, I don't have one. You're dumb. Not only are you dumb, you're not going to make it to the league, because that's telling me you don't study the game. You don't watch the greats. You don't learn from what the people who do it at the highest level are doing. Why would you not pay attention to that? That's insane. There are so many podcasters out there. To not have a favorite or to not have 5 favorites, pick somebody. Watch people that you want to learn from. There's so much out there to learn from. Just pay attention. Have your eyes on the field. Look at what's going on. You're going to pick some stuff up. And the cool part is the people who are good hosts that are worth learning from have good shows. What a coincidence. They have good shows. So not only are you going to learn something, you're also going to be a viewer of a good show. So it's not like you're wasting your time. This isn't like, go hit the books. No, that sucks. Like, studying sucks. You'll learn stuff, but it's not entertaining. Podcasts are. So spend some time. Throw something on, even if it's in the background while you do something else. Throw something on, learn from it. If you want to be really intentional, I hate using that word. I really do. But if you want to be really intentional, take notes. What do you like about certain interviewers? What do you not like about the interviewers? That's when stuff starts to get fun. You really start to hone your craft. Next. Use protective language without sensationalizing. I think this is interesting, and I think it's definitely important for the times we're in right now. obviously PBD touches politics a lot. And the people that he probably assumes he's talking to are also probably politically inclined. His point is you need to learn the English language at least to a point where you can communicate effectively without needing to sensationalize things. So he advises, like, use words like allegedly, possibly, we'll see, speculate, I don't know, do your own research. These are things that obviously we can see coming up a lot in a PBD episode or in a Rogan episode or in a Tucker Carlson episode or in anything from the Daily Wire, RIP. And I think he makes a great point. Avoid things like guarantee, promise, etc., or you're going to get in trouble. And all of this, he ties it up in a nice bow, and I agree with, like, it's not a badge of honor to get canceled. Like, don't do that. He uses the example of he sees people with it in their Twitter profiles that are like, been canceled 12 times. Like, it's like, dude, that's not cool. That means you don't know how to speak efficiently and effectively. There's ways to deliver your message without sensationalizing. So obviously, especially in the political field, that is very important. But I think it works across the board. I'm trying to think of a podcasting example. If I got on here and I was like, I guarantee you your podcast will do 1 million views in the first week if you post 2 episodes week 1. Now, posting 2 episodes week 1 is something that for the right podcast, I do preach. It helps you with download numbers because you get 2 episodes. If your first episode doesn't necessarily, is like more of an intro episode, and your second one will be a better example of what the show is as a whole, drop them both first week. You give them a taste of, hey, here's some background context on the show, and then also here's what the show really is. First week numbers explode, you take off. Now, I'm not going to guarantee you 1 million downloads because I don't know the show. I don't know you. I don't know your audience. That would be sensationalizing for attention. But if I get up here and I'm just like, hey, just drop the first 2 the first week, I think it's a good idea. It should help you. That's not as sexy. That's not as, what did he just say? But it's true. And over time, that type of advice versus the sensational version of the advice is going to build a better relationship with you, between us and you. So great point on that one. I thought it was interesting for him to say specifically because I think he's somebody that some people would say is guilty of sensationalizing. Preparation. This is where I kind of got a little bit of like I don't know about that, Patrick. He said, pay a research team $20 or use ChatGPT to do your research for your podcast. He said, AI has taken over 80% of the process to creating a podcast. Now, here's where I would say, no, it hasn't. Because maybe for the self-starter at home, yes, there are softwares and apps that have AI and other intuitive tools built into them that can help your process in terms of streamlining your content production and your distribution. At the highest level, let's use, I don't know, Patrick Bet-David as an example. I promise you 80% of his show is not created by AI. Here's why I know that without knowing him. Because he has an editing team. And that is the only point that I need to make to show that. Because the editing team is creating at least 80% of what the podcast is. How do I know that? Because we've done over 1,000 episodes here, and that's been the case across the board for every client we've ever worked with. So while, yes, AI is important to incorporate, it has not taken over the space. And he actually disproves his own point later when he talks about, he knew a guy who spent $100K to start a podcast and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, at the highest level, $100,000 a year is a good budget for about 50 episodes a year. $2,000 an episode, very, very fair price. To be honest, cheap if you really talk about like highest episode or highest quality of episode. But then he gets into like, start with the basic equipment at the beginning, don't spend too much money, and then get into the higher. Agreed, dude, agreed. You absolutely don't need to start with $100,000 unless you want that caliber of quality fresh out the gate. Going back to, I guess, mitigating expectations, also just kind of like understanding who you are and where you're at. But yeah, interesting. Do you have anything to share on that, Easton? I don't want to feel like I'm just like throwing stones because I'm not. I respect him and what he's built phenomenally. I just think it's a ridiculous claim to say 80% of the process is automated now.
Yeah, I don't know what he means by creating. I feel like he maybe means like creating the outline. I don't remember exactly what the video says. I think that's definitely a broad claim to make, though.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, might be sensationalizing a bit there.
Yeah, honestly.
Okay. We're cool. Handshake. All good. Let's move on. Engage with the comments. Yes. This is exactly what we were talking about earlier. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. You see us in the comments. He reads the comments. And I was so psyched to hear him say this because he's somebody, especially in the lane that he's in, where this can get dangerous. But the way that he explains it is he reads the comments and he's read them so much for such a long period of time that he knows the difference between his trolls and his regulars. And I'm gonna steal how he frames that. He knows when he gets into his comment section which handles are regulars because he sees them repeatedly popping up week after week, day after day, clip after clip, because he sees them show up and they're offering good feedback, whether it's loved this or hey man, great guest, or even constructive, like, hey, I disagree, but, here it is. It's constructive conversation. Those are his regulars. The trolls are the people who come in and are like, PBD's a grifter, PBD, just another Trump stan, blah, blah, blah. Like, he knows to look at those comments and basically pass them through a mental filter. Those are not going to affect me. Now, that's a massive skill to be able to learn that, where you are taking in all of this feedback, people talking about you on the internet, and you're hearing it and you're consuming it and you're just letting it roll off your back. That is so difficult to do. It's such an easy thing to get into a place where you really bear the burden of all those negative comments or just trolling comments of any sort. The important thing to remember is obviously those people online don't know you. And now we're outside of podcasting and more just personal, but those people online do not know who you are at all. They only know what they're seeing on the screen, which is not who you are completely. It's a part of who you are. And if there's truth to those criticisms, then think about it. But for the most part, why would you take advice from somebody who doesn't know you? The end. Shut it down. Moving on. You can learn a lot from those comments, by the way. Like we talked about with Linus Tech Tips when he talks about his Reddit community a few weeks ago. Your audience will show you some blind spots, and it's why we want to hear from you. Hey, how can we be better for you? What are we missing? Are there topics? Are there people? Or is something wrong with the production? Does EASTON need to do a better job? Everything across the board, let us know. And we'll listen, unless you're a troll. Consistency and regularity. Don't overwhelm yourself by biting off too much too fast. I love this example. PBD said that when he started podcasting, he wanted to do 3 or 4 episodes a week. Over time, he realized that 3 or 4 went to 2 to 3, and that went to 1 to 2. And then he realized, I can't do this anymore. And he stopped. He just realized he can't do this. And eventually PBD just got to a point where he was like, I can't even do the podcast anymore. I'm burnt out. And you put yourself in that scenario by trying to do too much. And this is something that I preached the other day when I spoke at Soho House. You need to be realistic about what you can actually devote to your podcast. The ideal is 1 a week. If you can do that, do it. If you feel like that's a lot, go to 1 every other week. But don't put yourself in a position where you're like, damn, I told myself I'd do 3 a week. First of all, you don't need to. That's the higher level of podcasting. You don't need to do it. So don't bite off too much because you're going to put yourself in a spot where you burn out and then you're not even going to do your podcast anymore. And then you've completely defeated the purpose and you had zero fun doing it. Know yourself. Know your schedule. Only bite off what you can chew. Choosing co-hosts. He talks about here how you can't both agree on everything. It's better to disagree when it comes to content. And I agree with that, ironically. I think that if you just get on there with somebody who's so like-minded, then you're not going to get a lot out of it. You're just going to basically create an echo chamber. Now, if you can find a fan base who vibes with that echo chamber, that could be really nice. But I think those are more rare than a show where it's like, hey, me and EASTON are going to get on here and talk about our favorite basketball players, and he loves Jordan and I love LeBron. That's a better show than we both love LeBron. Although I would want to be on the LeBron show. Moving on, because we're going to wrap things up really quick here. Making interviews exciting. Yeah, cool, I guess. I mean, duh. That's all I'm going to say on that one. Analyze data. This is smart. He gets into like, hey, watch your viewer retention, watch your views, make adjustments as needed, take a break to strategize if necessary. I thought that was interesting of like, hey, we're going to take a week off, just dive into numbers here and really figure some shit out. Make sure we got this locked down. I know that we've had different portions of the show in the past where we've lost viewership, and you heard me make a joke about it earlier of like, can't take too much of a beat, we're going to lose people. Great, so we're not. So just pay attention to your data. There's a ton that you can learn there. We will do a video if you want to see it, only if you want to see it. Let us know in the comments, because I think it would be useful to do one that's like how to analyze your YouTube analytics. That I think would be really helpful. I know that's been a really helpful thing for us. We continuously go back to it. If you look at either mine or Easton's computer, there's always a YouTube analytics tab open. It's never closed. So I think if you want to see that video, let us know. Otherwise, it might just be boring for people. So if you want to see it, tell us. Lastly, call to action, and I'll take one now. Thanks for coming. Like, subscribe, comment, let us know. Hit that thumbs up, hit that bell so you know when we drop. You want to hit your viewership with a call to action at the end of the video. If you've made it this far, I mean, honestly, I feel even bad asking you for anything because you've given us so much already with just the time that you spent with us. But that said, if you really want to continue to help us out, hit that sub button. We just hit 100 subs last week and this week, and we are psyched about it. And we'd love to hit 200. Maybe we'll do something at 200. Maybe we'll do a giveaway. Hit that sub button. Share this with a friend. Overall, I think if we're looking at this whole thing, thumbs up, PBD. Appreciate you, bro. Great lesson. Awesome video. And I think we all learned a lot. I know I took something from this. I hope you did too. We will see you next week.